Okay, so GLM 5.3 is here, and this is the first Fable or Metis level open model, which is kind of crazy, but it's actually better than Metis for cybersecurity related tasks, which is kind of ironic. Now, Elon thought we were going to get there in 6 to 8 months, but the GLM folks already surpassed it in less than 2 months, which is kind of incredible. Now, this is the best open weight model, period. However, it also gets close to the frontier and in some cases actually surpasses the state-of-the-art models that are available today. Now, all of this thanks to continued post-training of the GLM 5.2. So it uses the exact same base model, which really shows that you don't really need these humongous models to get to the frontier. All you need is better post-training. And we actually saw this with the DeepSeek V4 Flash, which outperformed its predecessor just by continuous post-training with better data and better RL environments. And this is the exact story with GLM 5.3 as well. Now, for this model, they completely redesigned how they were training the models. Rather than asking it to do exercise coding, they trained it on real-world coding tasks. So these are the tasks that an engineer would perform exactly in the same manner. Okay, so we're going to quickly look at some of these benchmarks, but I want to spend most of the time on some of the emergent properties, which I think are a lot more interesting. Now, in general, it's the best open model, period. Especially if you look at some of the agentic coding terminal benchmarks, it surpasses Kimi K3, which was released just a few weeks ago. Now, the way they did it is a lot more important than just the raw benchmarks. In general, open weight models have been pretty bad at token efficiency, but this is the first open weight model that actually is really token efficient. For example, on max setting, it uses about 75,000 tokens to get to 34% on one of their internal benchmarks. On the same setting, GLM 5.2, which is a pretty capable model, uses almost 90,000 tokens, but only gets to about 24%. Now, the most interesting thing is that the difference between the token consumption at different levels is a lot smaller for this new model compared to even some proprietary models like Fable 5 and Opus 4.8. Now, how exactly do you do this? Well, the answer is simple. More RL environments, more diverse tasks, and more compute. And the funny thing is that even a 700 billion parameter model can beat a 2.8 trillion open weight model, provided you have better environments, diverse tasks, and you throw in more compute. Now, I'm going to show you some tests on how good this model is, but we need to talk about this emergent cyber capability, because this is what is going to set this model apart from the rest. Okay, so according to them, they started adding vulnerability discovery data and related environments into the training mix with the goal that it will get better at finding and reasoning about vulnerabilities. But through this scaled RL, the model began to reason across multiple stages of exploitation, forming coherent plans to complete exploitation chains. Now, this is a similar behavior that Anthropic and even OpenAI has reported. But now we have the first open model that not only gets to the Metis level, but actually beats it on the Cybergym benchmark. And you're going to have the weights out in a couple of weeks, which is both exciting as well as a little frightening. Okay, so they shared some round numbers. So far, it has tracked about 2,400 different vulnerabilities. Some of those have been disclosed, other are still under embargo. But it kind of shows you that if you have scaled RL training with proper environments, any of these models will be able to find these different vulnerabilities. So CAT is out of the box. Any model can be trained to get really good at cybersecurity related tasks and essentially exploit them. But you also need open models for defenses. Because if you remember, back in July, there was a big incident in the Hugging Face infrastructure where GPT 5.6 Soul actually hacked into their infrastructure And they had to use GLM 5.2 in order to defend against it, because they couldn't use these proprietary closed source models for that, which is kind of ironic. Okay, so next I'm going to show you some of my own tests, but before that, a quick word from today's sponsor. Let's talk about today's sponsor, Momentic, which helps you catch real bugs in your web application before you ship them. You write end-to-end tests for your web and mobile applications in plain English. Momentic builds, runs, and maintains them as your product changes. It connects to the agent of your choice through the MCP server. Then you describe what tests to run on your web application. It builds and runs the tests and store them as a YAML file that you can audit. Now, if something changes in your application, like a new required checkbox, when a test encounters a failure, Momentic classifies the type of the failure. If it determines that the failure was caused by a product change, it can automatically update the test. You can configure whether the test is still counted as failing in that case. This is the self-healing capability that makes it apart from other solutions. You can get started for free, so do check them out. Link is going to be in the video description. Okay, so to test this model, I am going to be using Cline, which is an open source agentic coding harness. So they have something called Cline Pass, which gives you access to a number of different models. If you're interested, link is going to be in the video description. Now, another way to access this is on Z.ai coding plan. So if you go to the normal Z.ai, the model is actually not available. You need to subscribe to the coding plan. But I'm going to be using Cline because it gives me access to multiple different models. So if I go to Cline, in the model list, through their Cline Pass, I can select GLM 5.3. Then we need to set the effort level. I'll keep it to high because the tasks are going to be relatively simple. Okay, so here's the first task. I'm asking it to create a 3D ISS tracker for real time. If you have seen some of my previous videos, you probably have seen this. Now, this is not only a task which tests the model capability in interacting with an external API, but also tested its ability to create visually appealing UIs. So we're going to send this in. Model output is actually pretty fast, pretty decent. Okay, so while we were waiting for that, I asked it to create a Pokedex with the first 50 different Pokemons, and I think it does a really good job. So it's able to find these assets, put them together, especially like these animated assets, and then you can actually visually see them. It's pretty minimalist, but I think it does the job. Well, this is pretty neat, and it also has overall all the functionality that you would expect. So pretty nice. Okay, so yeah, here's the output, and it's actually pretty neat. It's definitely using some shaders and renders the planet surface, which looks accurate, and especially I really like that it is using the correct orientation of the sun right now. But I also like the animation that it added for the International Space Station. You can actually check the current location, which is here. So it's near Europe, and that seems to be pretty accurate here. So pretty nice. Okay, but for transparency, it took a couple of turns, so it didn't do this one shot, which is really interesting because most of the models actually struggle with the initial rendering, which is really interesting. Okay, so one of my other favorite tasks is to ask these models to create a website about itself. Now, it seems like it was able to find some basic information, but the biggest problem was that it said that GLM 5.3 specific specs or benchmarks are not published yet. That is not true. But let me show you what the website actually looks like. And you can see it's purely wipe-coded wipes, right? It has the basic information about itself. It has a context window of 1 million token, which is accurate. Then it talks about like the history of evolution of GLM models. And so nothing actually really concrete here. I think it can definitely do a much better job if it was able to do a thorough research. Now, the model has been out for a couple of hours, so maybe the web pages are not properly indexed yet. It did add this really neat animation, looks pretty great, but overall out of the box, I'm not really impressed with the UI design. Okay, this last one is just another test where I asked it to create a tourist attraction map for this. Now the rendering actually is pretty accurate. It's you able to use and find an open source map, but I think the final output could definitely use some work. So for example, there could be pointers which indicates the place. Also, the UI is again pretty lacking here. Okay, but in general, this week has been pretty exciting. We had major model releases almost every day. And on Friday, we are expecting the release of Quen 827B model, which I think is going to be the most exciting one because you can actually run that on consumer hardware. But even for GLM 5.3, since it's a 700 plus billion parameter model, you can use this or run this on a DGX Spark cluster. I have a couple of these, so I'm going to try to squeeze this in and we're going to report back. Anyways, pretty exciting. Let me know which one is your favorite. I was more excited about the DeepSeek harness, to be honest, because I've been playing around with it and have found some really interesting things in there. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.